this nightmare. That's vetch and yellow star thistle primarily. Sunder oats, more vetch, yellow star thistle. Wow. This is the fate of the few poppies that do manage to grow here. Choked out. Got a late start this morning, heading to another one of my experimental plots. On the left is the creek. Beyond that is housing developments. On the right is an incredibly incompetently planted urban forest of the largest oaks in California, planted right next to each other. Here we have the same people that planted these, the people that pay to bring the goats in because of our fear of fire fuel. Trimmed a handful of branches, what was that, back in February? And left them, just left them here. Today's May 30th. And now you see what happens when the fire fuel grows. You've got kindling and sticks, and the perfect recipe for fire. Created by the very people who are supposed to be fighting against fire fuel. As I make my way over to the spot, I just want to show the impenetrable layers of invasive Himalayan blackberry that the city and the goat grazing companies will tell you the goats get rid of. They absolutely do not. They just keep reaching out their tentacles further and further every year. As you can see, this channel is dry, just like the spot I was at yesterday. And on the way over here, all the streets were flooded with irrigation water for lawns. You see this hanging down from the tree? You might think it's a broken branch or something. This is actually just an old vine of the Himalayan blackberry. They climb up into the oak trees there. All that right there. That's all Himalayan blackberry. Here's a good spot to show, I guess, the story of this place. I've got a native sedge at my feet, but note where it is. Right in the bed. About the only place it can survive now or be safe from human management. You see, pan up, and all the way to the edge now is Italian thistle. Looks like we've got some mustard in there. It reminds me of a lot of California. People probably are smiling about the bright yellow flowers that they see on the sides of the road. Nope, not supposed to be here. And here's all the dried up annual European grasses. Not all of them are dried up. May 30th. There we go. I guess I have to be thankful that I had as much time as I did before the noise started. And again, you know exactly what that noise is. It's a never-ending battle of humans against vegetation. My only question is that a residence, a homeowner doing that, an HOA doing that, or is that the actual Park Service coming out and trimming branches of the forest that they incompetently planted. Welcome to nature. And this is why I don't bother waiting until it's quiet to do my monologues. If I did, I would never have a chance to record them. So today's goal, I'm gonna do what I should have done in the first place, because I pulled milk thistle from here when it was first sprouting, but then I didn't do anything else. And you see that the Italian thistle took advantage of that opportunity. I should have planted something else, something native, but I was doing that over there. This I just decided to, have an open space, but obviously that didn't work out. So I'm gonna pull these and plant some native grasses and poppies. And again, if you're just tuning in and wondering why I'm recording this with all that noise in the background, that's just the way it sounds in urban sprawl. It really doesn't stop. I want to point out, again, I'll take a shot of it here in a minute, that where I laid down some native oak tree leaves, it's still acting successfully as a weed suppression. Get up early. Enjoy the peace of the morning. Not here. It does not exist here. I gotta tell you, these years living in urban sprawl have shown me humans not only don't have any respect for nature, they don't have respect for each other. I can see how people are gonna snap. Society, I can see why people aren't polite to each other anymore. I mean, this town is just a bunch of assholes that get on the road and road rage, leave their neighborhoods to this. The people that do live here, they're just fine with it. It's normal for them. 7 a.m., 6:30 a.m., by 8 a.m., it's all going. It has nothing to do with whether it needs to be done. Has nothing to do with considering your neighbor or wondering if, hey, maybe 7 a.m. is a little early to be running a leaf blower. Nope. Such thoughts of consideration don't exist here. That's how far gone it is. And I feel like it's heading that direction everywhere. And at night, you've got the construction going, tearing these places down, to build more of that. So the wildlife never get a break. I mean, the noise pollution is constant. But from my hippie perspective, it's pretty absurd to hope for people to care about our impact on wildlife when we do not care about our impact on each other. As long as you have an excuse, as long as you make a speech, you can be an asshole. Like I said, these are just contracts being fulfilled. This is just the weekly contract. Has nothing to do with whether it needs to be done or not. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a field over there being weed whacked, and it's weed whacked constantly. The only reason they're weed whacking it this year instead of goat grazing it is because the city planted trees over there. I'm going to talk about that a lot. I've been recording it over the years, documenting it, but I haven't released it. They will protect trees that they plant from the goats while feeding trees that grow naturally to the goats. Seems hypocritical. Seems like pretty good evidence that the goats are damaging when you have to protect the trees that you plant from the animals that you say are here to improve habitat. You know what I need now are more leaves, because the leaves are, like I said, a great weed suppression. I need something to cover the seeds after I water them. What's really interesting about the native leaves acting as a suppressant for the invasives is that they don't block the natives from breaking through. That's worth a study. If I actually have any science-minded people on here, and you're aware of a study that was done that explains that intricacy of relationship with native organisms, explaining how native leaves block invasives from growing, but don't block natives from coming through. Man, I'd love to read that. And if it doesn't exist, it needs to exist. The Italian thistle seeds are nasty, and they're all over the place. It really pays off to get them right when they're starting. Not just because they're painful to touch once they grow, but because the seeds are crazy. You gotta stop the seeds. The seeds of all of these invasives are crazy. Look at this ripped up brome. What's really interesting, and I'm going to share it all because I've been documenting it, I just haven't published it, is this urban planted valley oak forest that I pointed out on the way in here. Because it was planted by humans, they haven't grazed that area in years, and it's much better than the grazed areas. You know, that's something that a lot of people are going to say, no way. When I show you the results, it's going to be upsetting for those of you who want to blindly defend this goat grazing program. Simply removing the goats from the equation has caused the weed problem to improve. So when I heard that noise pollution this direction earlier, I was really worried that the city had decided to start managing that, and that's what I was hearing. For whatever reason, they stopped managing this side. The noise you hear in the background that direction is them managing a newly planted urban forestry project. Weed whacking all the lupins and the poppies. The guys doing it have no idea. They couldn't point out a native plant if their lives depended on it. Ow. That's the Italian thistle seed. Let me show you how disgusting this is. Imagine being wildlife, and this is what you are given as habitat. I mean, this Italian thistle hurts all the way to the bottom. It grows these spiny leaves all the way to the bottom. The stalk is spiny all the way to the bottom. And while this plant hurts, this one kills because of how they embed themselves inside of organisms. This one's painful to the touch. This one's painful to the organs. And that's what we call habitat. And these guys that you hear in the background, you know what they're doing? They're delivering these seeds to the ground. All that noise pollution, all those gas fumes, all the noise is them delivering these invasive seeds to the ground faster and not removing any of the fire fuel. It's just going to lay there. You can't tell me that's not stupid. And this is not the channel for you if you're looking for someone to be polite or politically correct. Stupidity is stupidity. And a lot of our public funds go toward stupidity. You can learn a lot through observation. That's how I did most of this. I went back to school, but what I learned in the classroom, it may have helped, but very different than what I learned out here just by looking and asking questions as I was looking. People don't do that anymore, it seems like. It seems like scientists don't even do that anymore. Look at that nightmare. Imagine foraging for food through this. You know, imagine you're a bird or anything, really. It's just spines and invasive seeds that'll hurt. Look at all those different invasive seeds down there. This is an absolute nightmare. And again, let me reiterate, that's why I say you have to plant replacements. You have to plant natives to help you fight this battle. Because with seeds like these, the problem isn't going to go away even just by pulling. Even me hand pulling isn't going to do it. But weed whacking and goat grazing definitely isn't going to do it. You know what's always missing is part 2 of the plan. Humans are great at issuing orders that say go destroy this or destroy that. Where's part 2? Where's the restoration part? Look at that shit. Makes me wonder about the places that these are native to. I guess Italy. I mean, what a nightmare. I guess it's worth looking into at some point, because I guess in some way or form it's not a nightmare for the creatures there. Hard to imagine. Well, I'm gonna put my headphones in, my AirPods, and try and block out the human noise pollution. Imagine being an animal who for centuries lived in silence and peace, and now you have to live with this around the clock. All our wonderful singing birds here trying to sing, but their songs are drowned out by the noise pollution of humans waging a war on vegetation. There's actually something to be learned in my failure here. Well, I don't know, maybe failure is a strong word because I didn't really have a strategy. But what happened is that I came out here and started pulling in January and February. At that time, it was just the grasses, the European annual invasive fire fuel grasses, the sunder oats, the ripgut brome, the wall barley, the stuff that's already yellow. And the reason it's a learning opportunity is to point out that these invasives come in shifts. So the Italian thistle was not growing yet, and it came after that, and therefore it took opportunity of the open space that I provided. Again, this is exactly why you have to put something down. You can't just leave open space. I mean, maybe sometimes you can, but when there's this much of the invasive plants here and this many of their seeds, you need an ally, and the ally is native plants. Speaking of native plants, we have a few wavy leaf soap plants. That's a lot nicer than this crap. As I pull all this stuff up, I'm realizing one of the reasons that things didn't go very well in this spot. I was just trying to make some space, you know. I didn't have a strategy, as I already mentioned. And I actually ended up putting down a blanket of the pulled grasses and put them down. Well, of course, from that came other invasives. Starting to be able to see progress. It's looking better. And it's tempting. I start seeing this and I really don't feel good until the whole area is clean. But I got to remind myself that this is an experimental spot. If I get caught up trying to clear out the whole area, I'll just be exhausted with that task instead of accomplishing the original goal. Okay, you hear that noise in the background? The weed whackers? That provides a educational opportunity. For me to do this properly, for me to do this perfectly, I need to haul all of this out of here or have an incinerator out here with me. Neither of those happens. Neither of those scenarios exists. I would need to have a truck, maybe a team of people to help me. You know, access to resources such as the Parks Department has. So, you could criticize me for not hauling all of these weeds out of here. And while you are correct, I want you to remember that the people in charge, the experts, are, as we speak, putting fire fuel on the ground and leaving it. The people in charge are doing that. They aren't even bothering to pull these up from their roots or plant native grasses to replace them. The people in charge are more clueless and more destructive than whatever criticism you can come up with against me. That's scary. That's unfortunate. You know, when I went back to get my natural science degree, I was pretty gung-ho. I was going to try and get the natural science club to work on some things out here. Turned out they already had all of their projects lined up. You know what they were working on? They provided volunteer labor to lavender farms and other farms. That's what ecology kids are learning, is a contribution to nature. Provide free labor for farmers who are raising, at least it wasn't volunteering for animal agriculture, but it was not native lavender. In fact, there's only one native lavender, I think, out of all the lavenders in California, and that wasn't it. So let's help a for-profit industry increase their profit margin by having ecology students go and provide labor, while this continues to just get more effed every year. All right, I'm going to take a break from here and go over to the other spot. This is such a nightmare. This is a pretty good learning opportunity spot also. I pulled the grasses from here. I did not seed with natives, but instead of the Italian thistle taking over, we have white horehound, which unfortunately is not native. But as you can see by the fact that I've allowed my dog to sit here with me, it's not dangerous on the level of a ripgut brome or slender oats. There are a few of those growing up in here, like a younger generation of those, but for whatever reason, in this spot, I mean, the most obvious reason is that the perimeter has large white horehounds, but is that enough to explain why that came up here so successfully instead of the Italian thistle? Anyway, I was just clearing a space so that me and my dogs could sit without being in danger. In retrospect, it would have been a really good spot to plant some natives. But don't get me wrong, I've been planting natives all over the place. There's just a few spots where I cleared an area and didn't do that. The reason I'm bringing it up is the learning opportunity of what happens, what can happen. Put the correct plant in place, and instead of invasives, you could have the correct plant. But I still think it's interesting that this species took over this spot. You'll notice that I also have Spanish lavender here, and it's not native. So, criticize me, condemn me. But, like I just told the story, our actual ecology club spent their time going and volunteering at non-native lavender farms, which is really dumb. But, so we have people cultivating non-natives for a living in California, and you want to condemn me that I decided to plant one harmless non-native. I mean, you're not completely wrong. I just wanted to see what it would do. It's actually a pretty tough plant. But I gotta tell you, we're talking about invasive plants in the trillions. When we make a dent in those, you can criticize me for my one Spanish lavender. So today, I'm going to remove a lot of this horehound and plant poppies and native grasses instead. But I'm going to leave some of it. I think it's interesting. It's an improvement. It's this also, speaking of, different levels of bad, this also is not native. It's an improvement over the ripgut brome and the Italian thistle. If for no other reason, it won't kill you or kill your dog. First priority should be getting the younger ripgut bromes and other grasses that are trying to grow back. There's another lesson to be learned there. They don't give a shit what time of year it is. They'll start growing as soon as the seeds find a holding spot. That's one of the biggest flaws with the goat grazing program. They temporarily shorten. A lot of times all they do is trample them, but they shorten the height of all the fire fuel. And the second they leave, the weeds are growing back. And these invasives don't take long. I mean, we had tall invasives. And again, I filmed all of this. I've documented all this. Just haven't released it. Like a couple of months later, the problem is right back where the problem was. That's just one of many problems with the goat grazing program. Hi, bye. Are you bored? I know, humans do weird things. Sure can hear humans from a long way away. As you can see here, I actually did sprinkle a few poppy seeds over here. The bulk of my poppy efforts is out there, but you see a few of them. And over here, I want to show you something with this lavender. At the base of it, I put some leaves, and you see that you don't have the invasive grasses growing around it. Doesn't seem to have bothered the horehound much though, but it does seem to work against these in every spot that I've done it. Unfortunately, with this sort of proximity to the problem, you still end up with a bed of invasive seeds. Even though this isn't perfect, it's a pretty darn good example of what a little effort can accomplish. Look at the perimeter. And like we were talking earlier about how if I was doing this perfectly, in an ideal situation, I would haul everything that I pulled out of here or incinerate it on the spot. I did at least pull them up from the roots and move them off to the side. And you see how much that helped compared to where they weed whack and leave them laying on the ground, or the goats graze and leave them laying on the ground. The wrong species grew back, but at least it wasn't that species, the species that I pulled. I feel like it's a lesson. I feel like it's a testament to what can be accomplished if you have part one and part two of your plan. I had part one in this case. Part two might have turned this into a real success story. Let's go check on my other efforts out here. You see where he is. It's the only safe place for him to be once I move out of my controlled areas. This is a tough plant, this wavy leaf soap plant. Flowers at night, but I'm not going to come out here at night. the density. So that's a coffee berry that's not doing very well. I'm just gonna take it out of here because it's not gonna make it. You see that there's a lot less weeds right here, and guess what? This is where I put some leaves down. See a couple of sunflowers that I planted. A few more. There's a poppy. Maybe I'll water that poor thing. Oh, here's a cluster of the poppies that I planted. Again, the neighboring weeds got so tall and they're laying over the top, so it kind of makes it not look as nice. But if you look past that and just focus on the actual ground, you see that there actually aren't those weeds growing up out of here. Again, this is over there. This is primarily weedless, with the exception of the poppies. See this? That's laying over from out at the perimeter. Oh wow. There's a success story. Again, you see that it's just the height of these that are laying over the top. Another success story. This is Hooker's Evening Primrose that I rescued before it got eaten by the goats and transplanted. This is a buckbrush. I may take this with me. I just don't think it's going to survive long term because eventually they're going to destroy this whole area. But again, let me point out what's happening surrounding these plants. I put down some oak tree leaves and it's really kept the weeds at bay. Obviously they're at the perimeter, but that's because of the height. Good for you, primrose. I had a flannel brush that was trying to grow, but it wasn't in very good health, and I put it here. So while it didn't make it, you can still see the success of putting down a native leaf suppression. That's an amazing plant, the wavy leaf soap plant. Besides what I planted, this is the only native out here other than the tree saplings. What an improvement. Imagine if this was a field of that instead of the invasives. But you have to take your first step. You start with a plot like this, and you continue. And I keep saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it until it sinks in. The key to success here is that I actually put in step 2. Step 3 is to continue. Pull these guys that are trying to lay over the top and keep planting. Pull and plant, pull and plant, pull and plant. Look, the amount of money they're spending on those guys over there weed whacking. You could do this like I did instead of that mindless shit. Because they do that multiple times a year. They're spending money paying the people. They're spending money on the machines. They're spending money on the vehicles that drive out here. They're spending money on the gas. And they do it over and over and over and over again. Do what I did. Maybe it'll cost you a little bit more. Maybe it'll cost you a little bit less. But you only have to do it a couple of times. And then you actually won the war. They're not winning anything over there. They're like sending, it's like, I always compare it to an actual war. It's just like sending troops to die. Let's see here. It's some of the poppies I planted, and we've got an Italian thistle trying to choke it out. So I'm gonna step in and help out there. Gotta go get my gloves though. Look at that wildlife poop. Sure looks different than regular animal poop, doesn't it? And you know what? I don't smell anything. Maybe a hint when I got my nose really close to it, but it's a lot different than human poop and even our pets' poop. I've got a whole nother series I'm working on called Why Doesn't Nature Stink? Here's another one of my sunflowers. More of my sunflowers. I'm gonna water this one. He should look healthier than this. You got to be careful watering natives. One of the amazing things, great things about them is that they don't require much water. I mean, I haven't helped these out in a long time. If it were any other, if it was like, let's say, one of the decorative plants that the foolish landscaping people plant, if you don't water it constantly, it dies. This is why we should be using California natives. Let me get back in the shade here. It's going to be 100 today, so it's already pretty hot. I want to talk about the battle between native plants, annuals, biennials, and invasives, because the natives grow at a certain rate. They grow at a rate that works with the other natives. The invasives just are sprinting out of the blocks, and they keep going. So when you see poppies, for example, coming up and it looks hopeful, the problem is, even if the invasives haven't gotten going yet, they pass the poppies like that, and a month or two later you can't even see the poppies. They just get buried, choked out by the invasives. They don't have the air, they don't have the space to expand, they don't get the sun. The invasives are actually doing harmful things down in the roots, which helps promote their survival. It's a lot of interesting stuff happening. And in addition to all of that, whatever insects or other pollinators are trying to access, let's say the short lupin, the small lupin, or the poppies, or whatever native you want to use as an example, it's almost impenetrable. I mean, I've filmed it. It's like, I don't know how they could get through the invasives to reach the natives. And then, of course, the natives die prematurely because they're choked out. And you're left with seeing bees pollinating with milk thistle, bull thistle, mustard, Italian thistle. I got a hummingbird on camera the other day interacting with Italian thistle. I mean, look what these wavy leaf soap plants are able to accomplish without any assistance. You know, they haven't gotten any help from me, any extra water. Now with the invasives, they're annuals. They don't worry about long-term survival. In fact, their goal is to grow quickly and die quickly and keep spreading their seeds. So, completely different ballgame, you know, trying to give credit to these invasives for surviving without much water. No, they did all of their growing during a short period of time, and now they're dead. You know, I saw a study. Somebody sent me a study trying to say I was wrong about the goat grazing. Some idiotic student did a plot and compared a grazed area once. And they were comparing annuals. And I'm like, well, what time of year did you go check? I mean, it's about as dumb as it gets. And these are our scientists. Well, that person will certainly have a job waiting for them, promoting animal agriculture studies. It's a quick lesson of the generations of the invasives. Laying down here, already long dead, we have annual grasses and even some Italian thistle. Next, looking young and green and healthy, comes the yellow star thistle. And you got the mustard. It just comes in wave after wave after wave. The order that I think I see it happen in are the European annual grasses, like we've got the wall barley, you got the slender oats, you got the ripgut brome. The ones that you see are already yellow and dead. Vetch starts pretty early, but vetch can be confusing because it can also be green still at this time of year. Milk thistle is early with the grasses. Then comes the Italian thistle, more vetch. After that comes the yellow star thistle and the mustard.